On the Crimson Tide. Live from Baumhauer's Victory Grill in Vestavia Hills, Alabama. Welcome to Crimson Tide Rewind. Presented by Bud Light. It's for the fans. Golden Flake, the official potato chip of the Alabama Crimson Tide. And by Baumhauer's Victory Grill. Legendary fun, legendary food, and the official watch party location of the Crimson Tide. Now live, this is Crimson Tide Rewind. Here's Roger Hoover.
Roll Tide and welcome to Crimson Tide Rewind, presented by Bud Light. Hello again, everybody. This is Roger Hoover filling in for Eli Gold, joined by Corey Reamer. We're at Baumhauer's Victory Grill in Vestavia Hills, and the Crimson Tide back on the winning track. 30-6 was the final score against Mississippi State on Saturday. And Corey Reamer, that was very good to see.
Yeah, it was. It was great to get back in the win column after a tough loss against Tennessee. It was, not our best performance, I would say. If you look at the box score or you just look at the final score, it looked like a pretty dominating performance, and it was, but us as Alabama fans have come accustomed to really looking solid no matter who we're playing, and each week we expect a lot of things. And there was a lot left to be desired on the offensive side of the ball this week for sure. Defense stood up, kind of got back in form, holding a high-powered offense, one of the more efficient offenses in the country, to 6 points. I'd say it was a pretty solid performance, but good to be back home, not under the lights totally, with the little few of the malfunctions that we had with some of the LED lights, and I saw Greg Byrne catching a ton of flack for that. There was people that were saying, we only come to see the lights, and I was like, well, there's also a football game going on.
The game was well lit.
It was, but it was good. Glad to see Bryce Young being able to go out there and continue to play well. After the injury, looks like he's not really having much of an issue with the shoulder. So hopefully that continues for the rest of the season, keep him healthy, and we can finish the season strong.
That's certainly the goal. And again, we will be talking about the Mississippi State game as we are getting ready for the open date. Alabama not playing coming up this Saturday, but then in 2 weeks taking on the LSU Tigers in Baton Rouge. So we'll even look ahead to that coming up. And if you'd like to join us on the show this evening, you can give us a call on the Yellowhammer Brewing hotline at 877-202-BAMA. Corey, you mentioned the defense played really well. This is now 3 seasons in a row against the air raid offense of Mike Leach. We've seen some great performances. Just what is it that makes Alabama's defense so good against the air raid?
Yeah, I think it's there's a number of reasons. I think, unfortunately for Mike Leach, he's caught us in the last 2 years coming off of a loss. It's not a good spot to find when you're playing Alabama after we lose to Texas A&M last year, turn around and played Mississippi State the very next week, and this season you got Tennessee, the Tennessee loss, turn around and get them again. And then in 2020, you got one of the best Alabama teams in history that you got to face too. So it's been a pretty tough start for Mike Leach in his tenure at Mississippi State's head coach. But it's just a good matchup. The way that they play their offense, and what we saw, what happened against Tennessee the week before, turning around and playing a high-powered passing offense, but a very completely different game plan than what Tennessee tried to execute against us, or did execute against us. And we're just able to come down and play, like I said on pregame, I think, is that we can have the ability to play from a top-down perspective on defense with this matchup. They just like to get the ball out fast and keep it moving. They just like to move at an extremely fast pace. They're not going to be taking the shots down the field like Tennessee did. So this is just more of a, can we run 100 plays in this game and tire this defense out? And they got pretty close. And the fact that they ran, I think, 80-plus plays in this game, only got 6 points, outgained Alabama's offense from a numbers perspective, and only allowed 6 points coming at the very end of the ball game, shows that this defense was ready for the task. They must have done some pretty good conditioning in this offseason to get ready for this. So that's how his offense works, though. He's going to run as many plays as possible. And it's a good matchup because the way our secondary sets up and the way we play, we were able to play 6 DBs, play a lot of dime package, keep everything in front of us, and just come up and make tackles and play the next play, which is very different from what we've seen some of these other offenses.
Great night for the Crimson Tide on Saturday in Tuscaloosa. Again, a win 30-6, the final score against Mississippi State. Again, we'll be taking your calls tonight on the Yellowhammer Brewing hotline, 877-202-BAMA. Stay tuned for more. It's Crimson Tide Rewind, live from Baumhauer's Victory Grill in Vestavia Hills. This is the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield.
Young with time now steps up in the pocket, looks, throws deep, got a man down there. Brooks has it at the 30. He'll be slowed down at the 31-yard line, but it's another first down for the Crimson Tide.
Tide fans, you can keep up with everything Alabama with the Alabama Crimson Tide mobile app presented by Cadence Bank. It's available at the App Store and Google Play. You can download the Alabama Crimson Tide mobile app now for free. We just heard the highlight of Bryce Young connecting with Ja'Cory Brooks, as a lot of different players were involved once again in the passing game this past Saturday, and we like to see that.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's great. We tried to establish the run. The running game wasn't exactly there like we've had seen over the progress that we've made over the first 6 games, and then the last 2 games has fallen off a little bit, but Bryce Young being able to get out there and still find these open guys down the field, even when the play breaks down, a lot of guys are going to get involved. I was really excited to see what we talked about last week was what we wanted to see from these receivers is when the play does break down and Bryce is flushed out of the pocket or trying to make plays with his feet, the receivers are really helping him out, trying to get open, and we saw a lot more of that this week. And I'm sure it was probably a discussion that happened this week as we prepare for the game. He did a great job of finding those guys. A lot of the receivers that are getting involved, but I've really been impressed with these 2 freshmen that we've got in Isaiah Bonds and Kobe Prentice. Those guys are continuing to play well, not just in the passing game, but blocking downfield. They're doing all the little things. And Coach Saban always used to tell people, if you want to play wide receiver, you got to also block. It's not just for you to go out there and catch passes. You got to be just involved in the running game. And those guys, as freshmen, are setting the tone really early and playing extremely well.
So the Crimson Tide pick up the win, 30-6, the final score against Mississippi State, and 2 players I feel like we talked a lot about in preseason, in the summertime, getting ready for the football season, had a big performance, at least on defense. We got to see the emergence of Eli Ricks as he was in the starting lineup, and he made an impact right away.
Yeah, he did. It was great for his first career start. We've been wondering where Eli Ricks has been. He's a name that was named to a preseason all SEC or a preseason All-American before the season even started. The transfer from LSU. Great to see him finally getting out there. You don't know what the reason was of why he hasn't been playing earlier, but that's been a constant question that I was getting, especially over the last couple of weeks. Where is this Eli Ricks guy? This guy's supposed to be one of the best talents at corner. You don't know what the reason is, but he finally earned a start this week, and he lived up to the bill. It might be he's just a gamer, He might be a guy that just shows up when the lights turn on. And I know Coach Saban would rather have the guys that are out there performing consistently in practice. And that might be the reason why he's not seen the field until this week. But after this performance, I think it's going to be really tough for Coach Saban to keep him off the field. I think he only allowed 1 catch. And they try to throw at him about 10 different times.
Yeah.
And he played extremely well. He's just got these arms that are just so long. You look like he looks like he's out of position, and all of a sudden he's just like go gadget arm. He can get out there and bat balls. And he's just really athletic. He's a natural at that position. Knows how to turn into the receiver to play the back shoulder throws or get himself in position if it's some shots down the field. Really excited to see him. It's something that we've needed. And the secondary as a whole played extremely well, I thought, this past weekend as well. Not just him, but his performance was definitely a highlight from this game.
And then on the other side of the ball, it came in at the end of the ball game. It was Tyler Harrell playing for the first time for the Crimson Tide, a wide receiver.
Yeah, a name that we've all been talking about as well, just as much. So wondering where he is. This receiving crew is a lot different than what we've had in the past with the absence of Jalen Waddles and Devontae Smith and all those guys that are just huge. Jamison Williams, the guy that you can you expect somebody just to take off running, and no matter what, these DBs wouldn't be able to keep up with them. We've really been missing that, wide receiver number 1, that first guy that's just the deep threat constantly that DBs from the opposing defenses have to respect. And it's good to see him finally getting out there. I'm not sure where he stands from a health standpoint, if he's fully recovered, fully ready to go for the rest of this season. It's just great that he got there and get some snaps. We saw some footage of him practicing the last couple of weeks, so maybe he's making progress, but it's still going to take some adjustment. The guy hasn't played in 7 games or 6 games leading up to this. It's going to take some getting used to, him getting in the system, Bryce and him getting on the same page. But hopefully he's that guy that we were hoping he would be and can be that deep threat to where defenses really have to respect those deep shots that we can take. We haven't had that with this group of receivers so far. We've had to rely on a lot of underneath routes and really haven't had that breakaway speed that we're accustomed to from these receivers this year. So hopefully it's good to see him finally getting out there. It's the first step of hopefully we got some tough games coming up. We're going to need some offensive production, so hopefully he's that guy that can bring it to us.
Still a lot of football coming up for the Crimson Tide, and still a lot of Crimson Tide Rewind coming up tonight. And if you would like to join us, give us a call on the Yellowhammer Brewing Hotline at 877-202-BAMA. This is the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield.
Young operating again from the pistol. Will hand it off left side to Gibbs. He'll run right side. 15, 10, 5. Touchdown, Alabama. Jahmyr Gibbs. 19 yards, and the Crimson Tide has a 13-0 lead.
If you'd like to join us on Crimson Tide Rewind tonight, give us a call on the Yellowhammer Brewing Hotline, 877-202-BAMA. And our first call this evening will be presented by Alabama 811. Alabama 811, reminding you to call 811 before you dig. We just heard a highlight of Jahmyr Gibbs with a rushing touchdown as Alabama did carry the ball. Gibbs at least did for 37 yards, 29 total in the ball game. But I know fans did want to see a little more from the running game a little bit in the second half.
Yeah, I think this was a game that it's, you hope to see a little bit better running performance, especially with what we talked about it last week, what Mississippi State and also in the pregame, what Mississippi State brought in terms of their defensive line and front seven. Not one of the better units that we're going to see all season long in terms of stopping the run. And able to hold, I think the total was 37 yards from Gibbs.
From Gibbs, yeah.
And not much else from any other production. And then it had a couple of sacks, brought the total down to 29 yards rushing, which is that's the frustration that we've seen, and you hear it from Coach Saban when he talks about it, is we're not finding that consistent running game that we're so used to. And what it does is it puts us in, not very good positions in terms of early down success, is what we talked about last week as well. Is we really want to be able to run the ball on first and second down to get those third and short, third and medium down and distance where it opens the playbook. It's a lot easier to convert those third down conversions, and we're just not getting it this year. It just hasn't been consistent. We've really relied on a lot of big plays, and this week with a lot of short field positions, that highlight that we just heard about, Jahmyr Gibbs could have ran for 99 yards if we were on the 1 yard line. He was so wide open and nobody in space. It was a great, well executed play, and that might take away from why the rushing numbers were so little this week, being in Mississippi State territory so often at the start of drives. But we've got to find a way to establish the run a little bit better, especially with some of these teams that we're going to be playing coming up. You just don't want to have those 3rd and 10, 3rd and long situations, 3rd and 9, where you've got to move. And it doesn't sound like much, but it makes a big difference on the plays that you can call to where you're converting third down situations. And I think the offensive line played fairly well this week. They continue to improve. It's a unit that we've talked about a lot this year, and they did a great job in pass protection, but the run game blocking was not executed very well, and it might be something that we're missing some holes or not seeing the openings like we have in the past as well. But definitely some room for improvement, especially against this defense that dropped a lot of guys into coverage against us this week too. Still not able to really take advantage of the run game.
Crimson Tide pick up the win against Mississippi State. 30-6 was the final score in Tuscaloosa on Saturday. We'll continue with more Crimson Tide Rewind coming up live from Baumhower's Victory Grill in Vestavia Hills. This is the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield.
2 on the play clock. 1, they get the snap off. They throw, and it is batted away and incomplete. And Bama takes over on downs.
To be a part of tonight's Crimson Tide Rewind show, you can submit your question to Corey Reamer on the Alabama Media Group Twitter line at UA_CTSN, AL.com, your source for SEC sports. And, of course, we're going to be taking your calls as well on the Yellowhammer Brewing hotline, that number 877-202-BAMA. And let's go there now. We'll stay here in Birmingham where Mike joins us now. Roll Tide, Mike.
Roll Tide, right back at y'all. Roll Tide up. Hey. Best remedy after defeat up in Knoxville, just kick some butt. Get back and kick some butt, Bama. They did just that against the Bulldogs of the state. We got 4 games left in this month of November. It's called the November sweepstakes. We're going to sweep every team left on our schedule. We're going to take down LSU and Baton Rouge. We're going to take down Ole Miss in Oxford. We're going to take down where we play at home. The little game the week before the Iron Boy there, because we're going to pound down on Auburn. Won't be like last year. We're going to take Auburn down. We're going to win the SC West. We're going to play in Atlanta for the SC Championship. Try against the Eastern Division champion to be announced. And we're going to the playoffs. When the first playoff panels come out, the first, you'll see Bama in the top 4. Watch that say. We're going to be in the top 4 next Tuesday when the playoff panels come out.
Yeah, we hope so. That's the goal for every time we go into a season is to find our way into the playoffs. That's definitely the case. I did like the discrepancy between last week's number of penalties and this week's number of penalties. We were talking about it before the show started. 17 last week, and what was it? 3 total, 2 on the final drive. 3 total, 2 on the final drive.
Yes,
yeah. And the other one was on what, a punting formation?
Yeah, so none on the offense.
Yeah, none on the offense, none on the defense, which is it's just hard to believe. And you look around the conference, and it seems that home field might have a few advantages this year. You're seeing a lot of discrepancies when teams are on the road, getting a lot of penalties thrown on them. But it's good. We'll take it. I mean, after the game that we played at Texas with 15 penalties, and after this last week against Tennessee with 17, and you saw they were a little more protective of Bryce Young this week, getting 2 roughing the passer penalties. That's great to see. It's it's part of it. It's the nature of the beast. You don't know who's going to be out there calling these officiating crews that are out there, what they see. There's a lot going on, and it's a fast game, so you just don't know what the reason is for when they do and when they don't. But it shows that we were able to bounce back and improve from a 17 penalty game to go out there with none on the offense and none on the defense. That's huge improvement. Hopefully, we're about to go back into a couple more road games against LSU and against Ole Miss. Those are 2 games that we're not going to be able to have. We got to play just as clean as we did this past week to be able to have success. So we'll see if we can make it happen.
Tell you what, I feel really good after hearing from Mike because he called me on the post-game show early in the 2020 season, kind of laid out the entire schedule just like he did there, and it went to perfection. It turned out to be a perfect season for the Crimson Tide. It went right to his script. I think we're going to repeat that coming up this year.
Hey, look, Mike just must have the keys to success. He's it. He just knows he's got the crystal ball that tells us what's going to happen for the rest of the year. I hope he's right. We've got some tough tests with LSU looking pretty strong over the second half of this season. They started out a little slow. But they're getting pretty comfortable, and they've got some pretty good playmakers on, in which we always expect. LSU always has a ton of talent, and we know it's going to be a tough game because we're going down there at night in Baton Rouge. It's going to be really tough. So I hope he's right, and we've seen what's happened down there before in the years past. It's always a tough place to play. They're going to be excited for us, especially coming off of a huge win for them against an undefeated Ole Miss program. It's going to be fun. We'll see how if we're ready to go. This week off is huge. I mean, it is huge coming at this time of the year with the number of injuries that we've got. Hopefully we can get some of those guys back. I know DJ Dale, and Deontay Lawson, and Jaheim Otis were not able to play this past week. So hopefully those guys can recover, get healthy, be back to full speed. But the guys that stepped in for and played extremely well.
Certainly did. And the Crimson Tide coming up, we'll have the open date this week and then at LSU on November 5th. We'll talk more about that when we return. Thank you, Mike, for the call. This is the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield.
with pressure coming from the edge, bringing down the quarterback. Will Rogers is sacked by Will Anderson, the second of the game for the Crimson Tide, and State will use the timeout right here.
If you'd like to be part of tonight's Crimson Tide Rewind show, submit your question to Corey Reamer on the Alabama Media Group Twitter line at UA_CTSN. Brought to you by AL.com, your source for SEC sports. Why don't we go back to that Yellowhammer Brewing hotline and go to Marion, Alabama, where Everett joins us now. Roll Tide, Everett.
Hey, Roll Tide. I have a question for y'all.
Shoot, man.
What does Alabama need to work on in the off week? And thank you very much for all that y'all do.
That was going to be my question to you for this segment. So
He took it right away from you.
Good job, Everett.
I think there is, there's a number of things that we've got to continue to improve on. We talked about it a little bit earlier. The running game still needs to be something that, still needs to have some consistency. I think the defense is playing extremely well, and they've got to continue to play that well going against some pretty solid offenses that we're going to face in Brian Kelly's LSU. And Lane Kiffin, he's going to have some stuff that's dialed up for us. But, I think that what we saw last week, not making the mental errors, not shooting ourselves in the foot, those drive-killing penalties that we saw in the past few weeks, that's been a huge improvement for us. But the running game has got to be number one. And you don't have to run the ball, for 100 yards every single game to have success, but it's something that just sets the tone for the offense. And we talked about it a little bit. It's one of those things where you just got to get into that rhythm and open up the playbook for Bill O'Brien and not put us in these long distance situations. And we talked about a lot earlier on, but I think that's the number one thing. And continuing to catch the football. And Bryce Young has continued to play well as a thrower. He's made a lot of plays the last 2 weeks, breaking out of the pocket and finding guys that are open downfield. And continuing not to drop footballs is another thing from the wide receivers. It's just small things, little things like that are what hurt you in big games. This past weekend we were able to get away with not playing our best football, playing against a Mississippi State team that we just overmatched, and we're able to build a comfortable lead with short field positions. Mike Leach comes out, obviously knows that he's got to score touchdowns, and he's going for it deep in his own territory, very deep in his own territory. Fourth downs a number of times, and the defense was able to you saw even on fourth and shorts, and that's the downside of, I guess, of an air raid attack, is you just don't know how to really run the ball between the tackles and get a half a yard to keep the chains moving. But you could tell that he knew that he just heard all the buzz all week about the fact that he hasn't scored a touchdown against Alabama in a few years, and he was just trying everything that he could to try to put points on the board. He was determined to get a 6 or 7 put on that board, not just field goals. So the defense played extremely well. We just got to keep building on that performance after giving up 52 points the previous week against Tennessee, to come back and really throw a shutout till that last drive. Is huge for us, and we've got to continue to play that well, because we've got some offenses that have been putting up points on the board a lot for sure. So there's a lot left to improve on that we can work through this offseason, but one of the other things is just get healthy. Get these guys some rest. It's a long season. We've still got some tough games coming up, so if we can get everybody healthy, ready to finish off strong.
And it really was the process personified at the end of the game, giving up that touchdown. The defense was so upset leaving the field. Coach Saban was really upset. Doesn't matter that it's a win. You still want to play the right way, no matter what the scoreboard says.
And I think that's a good sign for this team. You can approach that one or two ways, that you're playing mop up duty. You just want the game to be over with, not really going out there and giving effort. Or you can go out there and take pride in what you're doing. You don't want to be that unit that gives up the points, because Coach Saban's going to be upset, and the rest of the team wants to hold the shutout, because it's a big deal for defenses these days to pitch shutouts. But that's a good sign that you've got a lot of leadership on the defensive side of the football, where they're holding everybody accountable, whether it's the starters all the way down to the second and third string. And when they're on the sideline coaching those guys up, they're not just over there hanging out, chilling, watching the game, spitting sunflower seeds. They're into the game too. You saw it from a lot of these older guys that are out there. They're coaching up some of these younger guys, because they know that we need them down the stretch. When depth becomes an issue, you see 2 defensive linemen and a linebacker out this week. Some new faces got to step up, and you never know when that's going to that's going to be your number that's called. So we've got to get these guys prepared, and you want them to go out there and get these quality reps, just like Jalen Milroe earlier in the season. He goes out there and takes his job very seriously, comes in against Arkansas and leads us to a victory, and then has to play against Texas A&M as a starter. You just never know when that's going to be your day as a second, third stringer. So, they take a lot of pride in it. Coach Saban, that's when I feel like is the most heated, is when you've got your backups in and they're not out there giving the effort that he expects from his starters. And he doesn't let you have any slack just because it's the end of the game and the game is in hand.
We love it like that. We also love wins for the Crimson Tide, and we got that on Saturday again. 30-6 was the final score against Mississippi State. We're coming to you live from Baumhower's Victory Grill in Vestavia Hills, and you can celebrate 40 years of Baumhower's Victory Grill this fall with new flavors including Alabama hot chicken, fajita wraps, and legendary buffalo wings. Baumhower's Victory Grill, legendary fun, legendary food. This is the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield. Was over. It was head coach Nick Saban meeting with the media. Here is his opening statement after Alabama's 7th win of the year.
Well, I was really pleased with the way our guys competed in the game tonight. I challenged them in terms of how they were going to respond. Respond with your ability, your positive energy, attitude, how you block, how you tackle, the enthusiasm that you play with, and I was, pleased with the.
Is this the right one?
Had fun, wasn't a lot of anxiety. Wasn't always perfect execution, but to me that's a start. It's kind of time to answer the bell, and now the challenge is we need to build on that. We got a bye week coming up. We got a lot of guys that we need to try to get healthy, and I think we'll get some guys back, and but I think the number one thing is we want to build on sort of the chemistry of how we competed in the game today, and I thought the defense played really well, and the last drive, but we should be able to take the air out of the ball on offense, and couldn't run the ball very well tonight. That's something we definitely need to improve on. So hopefully Bryce getting a week off here now will really help him, maybe get back healthy. So, guys had a good week of preparation, and they went out and played a good game, and really pleased and proud of them.
That was the head coach of the Crimson Tide, Nick Saban, after Alabama's win against Mississippi State. And, Corey, we touched on it a little bit earlier. Some key players were out this past ball game, especially on that defensive line. Just what did you like about Alabama's play along the line with the really thin depth that we saw?
Yeah, and also to go along with that is we're out there playing dime, most of this game. And so we've got 6 DBs, and you saw Mike Leach kind of go away from what his normal game plan is to chuck the ball around as much as he possibly can. And I think he had 20 rush attempts in that first half. And it might have been something where he was trying to draw, put in some different packages, put us back into that nickel or base package to try to shut down the run, which hopefully opens up the passing game for him a little bit and Will Rogers. And we just weren't going to do it. We were committed to shutting the run down with 6 DBs out there, and I thought they did a great job. I mean, they weren't having any success against this dime front. The defensive line played extremely well, only rushing 3 guys, having a safety in there as your kind of your extra linebacker. It's a game that I would have hated to play because I would have never been on the field. Right. As a linebacker, you don't want to play these guys that are bringing 4 and 5 wide on a consistent basis and always out there trying to throw the ball around. They're trying to run out of those same formations, and we were just not going to budge. We knew that what their goal was to try to throw it, and that was what could potentially beat us. And they did a great job of shutting down the run with a very light box. And you got to give a lot of credit to those guys that filled in for some of our injured players going out there and making a lot of plays. Toto continues to play well. He's one of the leaders on this defense. And Will Anderson and company, the cheetah package, getting out there, getting after some guys. I think we had 4 sacks on the game and 7 quarterback hurries. It was a solid performance from the front 7, especially what we saw, which we didn't expect to see out of this Mississippi State offense.
Good win for the Crimson Tide, 30-6, the final score against Mississippi State on Saturday. Special thank you to Onward Reserve, the official apparel provider of the Crimson Tide Sports Network, for all the great gear this season. Visit onwardreserve.com for all of your game day apparel. Live authentically with Onward Reserve. You're listening to Crimson Tide Rewind, presented by Bud Light. This is the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield.
Three wideouts right. They'll bring one of them in motion to the left side with a single setback. Pressure coming from the edge, and Brian Branch will bring him down. First sack of the day for the Crimson Tide. The junior from Fayetteville, Georgia, and Sandy Creek High School, able to deliver the sack of Will Rogers.
Tonight, we'll take a look at the prescription for success. It's presented by Payless Drugs. Payless Drugs is your locally owned family pharmacy with 4 locations in Birmingham. Payless can handle your prescriptions, over-the-counter solutions, and home delivery. Payless at mynewpharmacy.com. The Crimson Tide with their only open date of the season coming up this Saturday. And looking back at your playing career, Saturday, were you just sitting at home watching college football like the rest of us on the open day?
Absolutely. This was one of the best weeks. You get to go home and relax a little bit, watch everybody else play. Just take it easy. Try not to do too much. You either stay in Tuscaloosa or go home and maybe get some home cooking. You never know. It's just a Monday. You still got a lot to do this week. It's not just you just don't show up. And there's a lot that goes on during this open week from a practice standpoint because the players don't necessarily know it while they're going through practice, but there's a lot of scripted plays that you're starting to prepare for not just the next opponent, but some offenses that you're going to see and defenses you're going to see over the course of the last 4 games of this season. And you've got to be mentally into the practice of the week and not just looking for that day when you can get out of there and go start relaxing and enjoying your off week, because there's a reason why coaches do that. They're trying to prepare you to give you looks that you're going to see not just next game but the last few games, so that when that week of preparation comes around, it's not the first time you've seen it. And a lot of it is that stuff that it's not their normal offense. It's something that they do very sparingly, but it's what they try to catch you off guard with. Some funky formations or just something that coaches are trying to figure out how they're going to defend certain packages that we're going to see going forward. And you've got to go out there and give them a pretty good effort, because they're going to base the game plan off of what they see this week in practice, of how it looks on film, that we kind of what certain calls are going to look like when we see certain formations or certain packages come up against these teams. So there's it's more of a mental week this week, but you still got to go out there and give a lot of effort. But then as soon as Friday hits and you're done for the week, it's just so nice to be able to kick back, relax, hang out with your boys, watch some football, watch everybody else, watch game day. You're not in a hotel. You get a little break from the routine, which is always nice, and just kind of get you excited for that Sunday when you return. Get out there, we do a little stretch and stride and kind of get back into the routine. The hardest part is making sure that they come back ready to go, because you kind of get in relaxing a little bit. You're not moving around as much, and then you got to start back and getting ready for a tough game against LSU. That Monday practice, sometimes we would have to restart some periods because we just weren't focused enough or given the effort that Coach Saban wanted to see after being off for a couple days. So it's a good week. It can have some upsides for sure, but I think it's going to be good for this team. We need it at this time.
Is it tough for a team knowing that you have back-to-back road games coming up with so much on the line in the SEC West race? Yeah,
I mean it's definitely something that you've got to really get ready for, because it's going to be 2 tough environments. LSU handing Ole Miss their first loss this past weekend changes that game up a little bit, but it's still an Ole Miss team that Alabama fans have gotten to know pretty well, that they're not going to just show up and lay over for us. And even on years that we didn't expect much out of the Ole Miss team, they've come out and made us go for 60-something point. We're scoring touchdowns left and right. Defense is having to play 100 snaps. It's a fast and furious game, and you got to find a way to win those ball games. So this is definitely tough when you got both of these back to back on the road, especially this one. Not this Saturday, but next Saturday. We know what that environment's going to be like, and we've got a lot of guys that are on this team that are from that area. They're from Louisiana. They're from Texas. They grew up watching these LSU teams and were fans. And we've even seen some moms that are upset that on signing day that they end up coming to Alabama instead of picking their home team of LSU. So there's a lot of bad blood in this rivalry. It's become a huge game since Coach Saban showed up in 2007, and you better be ready. You better put your big boy boots on, because it's going to be a tough one.
That's Alabama's next opponent, the LSU Tigers, coming up on November 5th in Baton Rouge. We'll talk more about that when we return in just a moment. This is the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield. What's on tap next for Bama is brought to you by Bud Light. Bud Light proudly welcomes back Tide fans to Bryant-Denny Stadium. This year, Bud Light is for the fans. Again, the open date is coming up this Saturday. We will have men's basketball. Alabama is taking on Southern Illinois in a charity exhibition matchup on Saturday at 2 p.m. We will have radio coverage starting at 1:55 across the network. So not our full pregame show for the charity exhibition, and that will be the only broadcast for that game. The game will be played at Foster Auditorium in front of students only. So it will be a unique game coming up this Saturday. But then Crimson Tide football team back in action on Saturday, November 5th against the LSU Tigers. We learn the kickoff time, 6 o'clock. Our radio coverage will start at 3 for what's always entertaining, as we were just talking about, Corey, Alabama against LSU.
Yeah, always entertaining, and it's going to be, I'm sure this one's going to be not one that disappoints. The way LSU's playing, and first-year head coach Brian Kelly, coming on strong here this back half of the season, looking really strong this past Saturday. Jaden Daniels is a guy that is really coming into form. He's been a playmaker. He's a guy that, can make a lot of plays with his feet, but also has an extremely strong arm. The transfer from Arizona State, I believe. They were really good in going out in the portal as soon as Brian Kelly gets hired for this job, going out there and filling a few spots that they needed to make this team competitive. Now they've got a few games under their belt. They're getting used to this system, and he seemed to have turned this program around pretty quickly from what we saw from LSU last year. So this is going to be a tough test. And good to see. One thing we didn't really talk about as we have in the weeks past is special teams kind of got back on board. Will Reichard is a guy that got some confidence back this week, going 3 for 3 with his leg and even hitting a 50-yarder. I think it's a good sign that he was able to go out there and have a clean game, because it could be one of those games like we've seen on the road this year already, comes down to a field goal unit. And also Burnup did a great job as well with the punting unit, putting, I think, 2 or 3 punts inside the 20, pinning Mississippi State back pretty deep. That's always good when you got to make an opposing offense drive the length of the field. This is an exciting game. I don't think we have to talk too much to build up the excitement for this one. We saw it's a 6 o'clock kick at night in Death Valley, one of the rowdiest places, probably the toughest stadiums that I've ever played in. And it doesn't matter if you got 2-year-old kids or 85-year-old grandmoms. They're not happy that you're showing up. They're ready to support their team, and they're going to tell you exactly what they think about you. So these players better get ready. If they thought that Texas was a tough road game or Arkansas was a tough road game, this is going to be something that's going to be exponentially harder for them. They got to be able to tune out the noise and focus on what we got to do to go out there and execute a clean game plan.
Back in 2008, we don't always get to hear Coach Saban's pregame speech. Somehow the video from that game got out. Just what was going through your mind when he gave probably the most epic pregame speech in the history of Alabama football?
Yeah, you could just tell how much it meant to him. It was and LSU at that time was one of the premier programs. They're coming off of a national championship that next year, and we had a great team. And it was the second year under Coach Saban, and even though the record in 2007 wasn't very good, we lost all those ball games by a touchdown or less. We saw how fast, if we buy into this system, that we can go out there and play winning football, and had a strong season coming up to that point, and we're really playing really good football. But we knew what it was like. It was time for some payback going into that one. And when I talked about the people earlier that were welcoming us to that stadium, there were not many kind words that were said. And I think that
not many kind phone calls to John Parker Wilson earlier.
Not at all. It was. I remember he had to turn his phone off. He literally could not use his phone because there were so many phone calls coming in. He had to change his number during that week. And we were able to go in there with an exciting win. Rashad Johnson getting the interception there in the end zone, and then John Parker finding Julio down the sideline to set us up for the I think it was the winning touchdown at that point. It was just a roller coaster of a game, but you can name every single year since then. It's been one of those types of games, and I expect this one to be another one. It's just something about playing down there.
Alabama LSU, it never disappoints. Coming up next week, Monday night, 6 p.m. We'll do it once again. Crimson Tide Rewind. Just we'll kind of take a look at the season as a whole, plus preview the LSU game. Roll Tide, Corey.
Roll Tide.
That's Corey Reamer. I'm Roger Hoover, in for Eli Gold. And if you missed any portion of tonight's show, you can always catch it on demand on the Alabama Insider Podcast. Download and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Special thanks to Todd Robbins as well as Ethan Carabin for producing here at Baumhauer's, and Jacob Smith back at our Learfield studios. For Corey Reamer, I'm Roger Hoover, again filling in for Eli, saying thank you for listening to Crimson Tide Rewind. Good night and Roll Tide.